Hi, I'm Mark Cantor. I'm the founder of South Florida Intervention. And today I have the privilege of having Dr. Ronald Gibson on with me today. Dr. Gibson graduated with honors from the University of Texas McGovern School of Medicine in 1990. Dr. Gibson was living the American dream when he separated his shoulder playing flag football in 1995. This injury led him to an orthopedist who prescribed Vicodin for the pain. As a result, Dr. Gibson became addicted to opioids. In the time following, Dr. Gibson's addiction to opioids progressed, and he became withdrawn, isolated, and depressed. His addiction eventually grew to include Xanax, Klonopin, Soma, and a host of other drugs. Dr. Gibson's wife filed for divorce at the end of 2012, took their 2 young sons after he was arrested for fraud. Today, Dr. Gibson is 8 years sober and in the midst of rebuilding his life. That addiction seemingly stole from him overnight. This is Dr. Gibson. Welcome. You have an incredible story. I mean, I'm just so, blown away by your story. I mean, you're everything that we don't think of an addict to be. I mean, you're an honors student, medical school graduate. I think you had a lot of other high honors in school, and but you're also an example of how addiction knows no socioeconomical, educational boundaries.
Yes.
Yeah. The reason for that is as much heterogeneity there is in the population, we all have similar brains, and that's where drugs work, is on our brain. And the similarities in our brain allow us to have a predisposition, or at least some of us, to becoming an addict. And my mother was a prescription pill addict and an alcoholic, and I never thought I would ever end up that way. In fact, I thought that was a weakness in her, and I was the pillar of health. I worked out, I was, educated, and I was never going to become an addict like her. And sure enough, I did. And
when you were growing up, when you were living at home, was your mother addicted to pills then?
No. She, my original father, they divorced when I was 5 or 6, and that's a separate story. But actually, I was kidnapped at age 5 by my biological father and taken off for a month to the middle of the U.S. and they couldn't find me, and they had the FBI and everything looking for me. Anyway, after a month of this scenario, I was finally returned to my family, and
wow.
She went to court, and they got divorced, and he wasn't charged with anything. So she was remarried, and we took off from San Antonio to Phoenix. And apparently it was very traumatic for me, because I don't remember anything about it. I don't remember anything about that whole month. I don't remember anything about my life prior to that. My life started the moment I came back and started school again. And after that, I know every single moment in my life. But before that, totally suppressed. And so she remarried, and I grew up with a stepfather. And actually, I had a different name. They changed my name from Donald Gibson to Jerry Sumrall. And then I lived under that name for many years. And then I changed my name back in 1991 to Donald Gibson, my birth name, on my birth certificate.
So growing up, after your dad took you to Phoenix, Arizona, after you were kidnapped,
right?
Was that ever discussed? Was that ever brought up?
No, the only thing my mother ever told me was that my biological father was a bad person. I'm never going to see him again. I'm never going to contact him. He's never going to contact us. So I was very fearful of him when I was young. And I actually did eventually meet him for the first time when I graduated from college from A&M. He came down, and I just met him like a stranger for the first time.
Wow, that's incredible.
Subsequently, we developed a pretty good relationship. And but to answer your question, my mother, when I was young, my mother did not have any symptoms of alcoholism or drug abuse. It was more or less after I went off to college that she started sliding from that, and it was progressive, and ultimately, took her life in 2001. She had probably an accidental overdose, but an overdose nonetheless.
Nonetheless, yeah, owed to addiction. So were you as good a student in high school as you were in college and medical school?
Well, I was a great student in high school. I wasn't, at least in certain areas. I think I got an award for the top physics student and biology student or something. But it's funny, in middle school, I actually flunked out of 5th grade. I wasn't interested in school at all.
Right.
My mother was a teacher. In fact, she taught at my high school, and she taught our calculus class in school. So my mother was my teacher in calculus. So eventually I found that I loved education, and I really worked hard. And then when I went to A&M, I actually digressed again and almost flunked out of A&M. And they refused to pay for my school unless I applied myself. So
why was that? I mean, that was, prior to you ever discovering pills.
Correct.
So were you predispositioned to depression or?
No, I wasn't. I was, I had a lot of high hopes when I went to A&M. I entered pre-med, but I joined the Corps of Cadets, which is the military's part of Texas A&M. Sure. And so I was, quote, in military school and very regimented. And I was a freshman that was hazed and abused and, just like everyone else. And my mental state was not focused enough to apply myself as far as going to school. So I didn't go to class, and my grades were horrible. And the pre-med advisor called me in, and he goes, "Son," you're almost on the verge of being kicked out. You're never going to go to medical school with these grades. So you need to either find yourself again and pick another major and get a 4-year degree. So I picked geology of all things. I don't know why. I took a class in it. I kind of liked it. And then when I started geology, a switch went off, and I just started applying myself, and I rose to the top of the ranks in the College of Geosciences. And I was even accepted to grad school in the oceanography and geophysics. And I went back home, and my mother sat me down, and she goes, what are you doing? I said, what do you mean what I'm doing? I'm going to go to grad school. She goes, well, you wanted to be a doctor since you were 10 years old. What happened to that? I said, well, that would be great, but my advisor said I can't make it. And she goes, but now she says, but your grades are great now. I told her, I said, I'd have to start over. I'd have to, axe geology, go back to pre-med, take all those classes over, and then there's no guarantee I'm going to be accepted to med school. So, it's going to be years and years and years, and then I'll be 100 years old. And she goes, and my stepfather.
How old? So how old were you at the time?
22.
Pretty young.
22, yeah. So I said, my stepfather said, well, he says, well, you're going to be in your 30s anyway. Why not do something that you truly love? And I said, okay. So I called A&M up, and I said, I'm not coming to grad school. And they were mad, trust me. And so I moved back home to San Antonio and started taking all my pre-med classes over again from University of Texas at San Antonio, and worked at a hospital. And gradually, took my classes, part-time, and gradually took all the requirements and everything. And I actually moved to Houston, and I was a geologist for a while, but I took the Kaplan course for my MedCat, my MCAT, and
MCAT, yeah.
I didn't get in. The first time. They rejected me. And so I said, see, I told you. I don't want to go over. So I called a friend of mine at the med school, and she knew one of the guys on the admissions committee, and he told her, I was this close. I mean, like this close. So what I did was I went back to school and took some more classes, and refocused on the Kaplan and took the MCAT over again, and I raised my score several points, and I got in quickly the second time.
Good. So you're in medicine. So you're, because I want to.
Yeah.
I don't want this going too long, only because I want everybody to hear your story.
Right.
And if it goes on too long, people check out, and I don't want them to miss. Your story is fantastic. So you get to medical school, you do well, you graduate medical school.
Yeah, exactly. And so I do my residency at the Texas Medical Center in internal medicine. I graduate that, and then I start working in Houston as an internist. Mm-hmm. I worked for different jobs and stuff, and eventually opened up my own practice. And I actually was married for a short period of time, and I got divorced. And then in 1994, at the end of 94, I met someone that I really fell in love with and I wanted to have kids with. So we got married in the summer of 95. And coincidentally, that was the summer that I decided to go out and play flag football. And by this time, I'm 40 years old. So I'm running around out there with a bunch of 20-somethings. And
you're living the dream. I mean, you're a doctor, you're in phenomenal shape, you're playing football, you're married to the woman of your dreams.
Exactly. She's pregnant. She's pregnant already. And so I land on my right shoulder and blow it out. And I didn't think much of it at first. It's an injury, it's pretty bad, but I'll recover. So I went to see a friend of mine, Tim Sitter, who I went to school with, a great orthopedist. And he put me in this god-awful splint, which was very painful, and he gave me pain pills. Mm-hmm. I mean, I couldn't work, I couldn't sleep without taking some pills. And I didn't have a second thought. I said, I need to take pills, and I'm going to take them. So I took them, and they worked. But the injury was very slow to heal since I didn't have surgery. So it took multiple weeks for it to heal, or even months. And I continued to take pills. And then when the pain kind of went away, I never really stopped taking the pills. I got down to like one a day that I would take at night. And I did that for like a couple of years. And as my tolerance built up, I started taking two. And then I would take one in the morning. And then the cycle began. And back then, I don't know if you know, in the mid-90s, when you're a physician, there was no opiate addiction, no crisis, no nothing. The drug reps brought us opiate pills to the office by the hundreds. And all I had to do was sign my name. So I had a steady supply of medication.
Right. Okay.
And a need. And as my addiction grew, I would call it a dependence then, but once the switch was flipped, then things started. And then my mother died of a pill overdose in 2001. And I blame myself for that because, I'm a doctor and I didn't help her with her problem. And so then it kind of spiraled out of control for the next decade. And
at what point was there, my good friend who's Bob Elias used to ask people, what was the precipitating event? What was the event, or what was the moment that you knew you'd crossed the line in the sand, that you had gone from cucumber to pickle, so to speak?
I guess I don't think there was that moment early on. I knew there was something wrong, but and I didn't know anything about addiction. I didn't know anything about anything because when I trained, addicts were just weak-minded people.
Right.
Maybe alcoholism was a kind of a disease, but back in the 80s, they didn't know nothing about nothing. Trust me.
It was a moral failing.
Compared to now. So
lack of willpower.
But so I kind of knew something was wrong, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And I just kept rationalizing, you have some, I worked out a lot, so I had aches and pains all the time. And I didn't know at that time that opiates actually reduce your pain threshold. So I did have pain, but that was just a justification to take more pills. And then as I got addicted, I started feeling bad, and I took muscle relaxants and Xanax and all kinds of stuff. And, but I would say when in 2010, I took my family on a vacation to skiing.
Hmm.
And, when you're on vacation, you're stressed. And when you're at high altitude, your body's stressed. Well, when you're stressed, those opioid receptors become uncovered and you don't feel good. And so I wasn't even present during that day. I couldn't even get out of bed. I couldn't ski. I couldn't do anything. And when I got back, I realized, I've got a problem, and then my
So
wife.
by 2010, certainly,
Yes.
It's addiction is, everybody's well aware of addiction in the medical community,
Right.
and there were programs for doctors.
Right.
Why didn't you sound the alarm? Or
I went to an addiction specialist,
mm-hmm.
and he put me on Suboxone. And so I got addicted to Suboxone, quite honestly. And
that's not uncommon, unfortunately.
Yeah. He put me on Suboxone, and I was actually already on it. I already figured that out. And I was trying to do some research on how it worked and trying to, think my way out of this problem. And, but he kept me on it, and he never mentioned going to rehab or you have a problem or anything like that. And then fast forward a year from 10 to 11, that's when my wife filed for divorce, and I checked myself into a mental facility because I knew I had a problem, and I reached out for help. And
when you were there, how did they address the addiction issue? There was no mention. It was a stabilization but not a treatment.
I can't even tell you what they thought was wrong with me because, they never, I saw a lady that gave me some Subutex when I was in the facility, and I felt better, but then I felt worse, and I was sick and detoxing, and I was transferred to 2 or 3 different facilities. And, they told me I was depressed and had this and that, and ran a bunch of tests on me, but no one told me I was an addict. And that I need help. I need inpatient detox. I need inpatient treatment. I need this. I need that. I don't know if it's because I was a physician or I only had prescription pills or what, but for whatever reason, they didn't sound the alarm saying you need treatment. You need to be, in a facility or something. And, and of course, a year later, I was arrested. And so they put me in a facility quickly.
Why were you arrested?
Well, in the latter stages of my addiction, I gave up my practice. I don't really know why. I just wasn't motivated to do it. So I had to work at some different clinics, and I unfortunately joined a clinic that didn't have any patients. And because we didn't have any patients, we paid marketers to bring patients to the clinic. Mm-hmm. And you're not supposed to do that because they were Medicare patients, and they were actually paying the patients. And I didn't know this initially, but when I found out, I said, well, it's not really right to do that, but I just went along with it. I didn't care. I was mentally, I was sick, and I was not, at that stage of my addiction, I was only worried about where my pills were going to come from. Because I was
you're just trying to survive. You're in survival mode at that point.
I was writing my own prescriptions. I was getting other people to get my prescriptions. The whole world, the whole day revolved around where am I going to get my next batch of pills? And what went on with the business was way down the list.
Sure.
And so even though I knew it was wrong, I didn't wake up and say, hey, Plus, I wasn't realizing what was going on with the rest of my life either. My wife, my kids, my home, all the other important stuff. I just kind of just let it fall to the wayside, and but when I was arrested, I woke up. That's for sure.
Yeah, sure. And were you arrested at home?
No, I was actually working at a clinic helping another doctor out. Oh, by the way, my license had already been suspended. They took it because the board realized I had a problem, and I was called in, here and there. And, eventually I went to the Texas Medical Board, and they sat me down there. And this is interesting. They said, doctor, we don't know what's happened to you. We don't know why you can't follow our simple rules. You know, we need you to do this. We need you to pay a fine. We need you to do some CMEs, very simple things to keep your license, and you won't do them. Why is that? And I didn't have an explanation, you know.
And this is the medical board of Texas.
This is a medical board. And I said, well, I don't really have an explanation. Well, my attorney tried to, you know, rationalize it, and they just shook their heads and they said, well, we're sorry. We're going to revoke your license. I said, okay.
Yeah.
That's like, you know, who just says okay? I mean, who just says okay? That's fine. Just take my career. It's okay. It's whatever. You know, I can do something else.
I feel like the system really failed you. I mean, because I'm sitting here and I don't have an inkling of the education those guys had, but what would it have took for them to say this man is obviously struggling with a disease and needs medical attention, not punishment?
Well, because I was ignorant of my own condition, we never brought that up in the hearing, that I had a drug problem, or I didn't admit to myself that I had a problem, because this was before I was arrested. So it wasn't until at least a month or two at the recovery center that I finally realized what my problem was, because my mind started to clear up, and I said, "Oh my God, you know
what have I done?
What happened the last 10 years, 15 years, you know?" And then, you know, the real problems hit because of addiction, the consequences, the destroyed families, the careers, money, everything, home, everything gone. I didn't have a car. I didn't have anything, you know. And
so they put you in treatment at that point after the arrest?
Yeah, the federal judge ordered me to treatment.
And how long were you there?
4 months as an inpatient. Okay. Yeah, 4 months. And I finally realized what had happened and kind of why, and kind of figured everything out. But like I said, then the real problem started. You know, I wasn't just a recovery from drugs. I was recovering from all those consequences. And the major consequence was my freedom was going to be taken away from me. And so, you know, it was horrible. I mean, they put me in jail. I was suicidal, and how could this happen? And all the things you say when you're in that situation. And I mean, and then, you know, I was in prison for 3 years.
Wow. Where?
I was in different places. I was in Texas, at downtown Houston. I was at Oklahoma City, a transfer center. I was in a state prison. They flew me up to Boston I agreed to help the government, to cooperate with the government. And they wanted my help on a case. So they flew me to Boston to testify against some person who was committing Medicare fraud. So I testified, and they were kind of lenient on me. But so they had to fly me on Con Air to New York, and I had to stay in some dungeons and some state prisons and just wherever they could put me. It's a total nightmare. I couldn't believe it. And then I ended up in Georgia, my final destination, where I did a federal residential drug abuse program called RDAP for a year. And I was released, you know.
And which, incidentally, a year-long program is the appropriate length of treatment. And I'm a proponent of that it takes 1 year for the brain to recover from, you know, it's an organ, it's damaged, because the organ damage takes 1 year to recover. So incredible story. I mean, you're an incredible guy, and I'm sorry that you went through all of this. And I really feel like the system failed you, that there's somebody somewhere along the lines, especially in the medical profession, should have had the knowledge, the experience, or even the care to say, wait a minute, just stop. Let's get this man the proper help. What would you say? I come across a lot of people, you know, one of the things that, to just jump around a bit, that when I get calls from parents, from mothers in particularly, one of the things they want me to know is how smart their son or daughter is. And I always laugh, because there is no lack of intelligence in the rooms of AA and NA. I mean, it is a smart, intelligent group. But what would you say to somebody that, a professional like yourself, I think that with, doctors, airline pilots, attorneys, professionals, it's a little bit harder to, because they are smarter people. It's a little bit harder to
it's
get them to see it.
Yeah, it's because we're arrogant in a way. We're extremely self-confident, intelligent. We have a little bit of arrogance, and that's what makes them successful. But along with that, they fail to see the very simple things, and they don't recognize what's going on inside them. And the main thing they don't recognize is that this is a brain disease. Mm-hmm. And when your brain is affected, you do not think the same way, okay? So your brain is in effect tricking you into thinking, well, it's okay, I can do this, or I'm doing this, or whatever. And you don't think about it as an illness. If someone came up to you and said you had cancer, you would go, oh yeah, oh my God, yeah, I need treatment, I need this, and okay, we're gonna do this. But that's not the way addiction works, or with other mental illness. Yeah. People call you an addict or depressed or bipolar. You go, what?
We're stigmatized. Yeah, it's really stigmatized still.
I'm not that bad. I mean, I got a problem, but I'm okay. Whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I think your intelligence kind of works against you in a way. Because you think you can think your way out of it and rationalize your way out of it. And, and the bottom line is that you're sick and you need help. Just like if you had any other illness, cancer, heart disease, tumor, whatever it is, you immediately seek out help, right? You don't sit, in your home and just go about your day and forget about it, right. or minimize it. You just, you get help. But, and until society realizes that mental illness is real, including addiction, we're still going to have these stigmas. And so that may be part of the reason why I can't get any semblance of a career or life back, because, people are going to look at my past and they're going to go, no way. This guy's obviously got a problem.
Well, but what they fail to realize, as you and I spoke about last night, is that your education combined with your experience can be, right. I mean, there's tremendous value in that. I see it. I really do. And, you mentioned wanting to write a book on, in a brief, easy to read, kind of like an addiction for dummies explanation of addiction as the disease model. And I encourage you to do that because, it's one of the things I discuss with families. I talk about the fight or flight response, the midbrain disease and things like that, but we need more education. And again, I think that
it's just a thought I had. I know what a lot of people, a lot of patients and their families, when they're faced with this and they do finally make the decision to get help and they enter a recovery center, they're all over the place. They sometimes they don't know up from down. They're detoxing. Their brain chemistry is out of whack, and they're trying to go to group. They're trying to listen to their counselor. They have all these consequences. They may go to jail. I mean, all these things. I was just thinking, look, if they just had something simple to read, and try to understand what's happening in their brain, that they can maybe they can read it over and over and over again until they realize that they need help, and they can actually get better, a lot better. They can go back to who they were or even better. And right. I guess I have a lot of problems with motivation, self-confidence. I've had so many people just tell me, no way, you're crazy, whatever, can't get a decent job. Forget about medicine. I mean, that's just, that would take, a monumental effort and money and, things I just don't have, and plus I couldn't even be a doctor right now. I've been out of medicine for 10, 15 years. I'd have to go back to school almost.
Right. Well, but like I said, but you still have the education, and you still are valued. Look, I really appreciate you sharing this story with me, and just sitting here, it's given me some ideas and people that we can reach out to. But I want to thank you for spending the time with me here today and sharing your
Okay.
story so open and honestly. And I think that people hearing this, this is going to help a lot of people, especially the lawyers, the doctors, the airline pilots,
Yeah.
the entrepreneurs who think you
Yeah.
can't tell them anything. I think this is just going to be
Yeah.
such a beneficial thing. And again, I want to thank you, and I appreciate it. And so.
No problem.